Hello, hi there. Welcome to Guiding Voice podcast series, The Guiding Voice for a Better Future. This podcast is to help students and young professionals to shape their careers. Dear listeners, in every episode, we interact with industry experts, global leaders, or academicians or coaches to drive some insightful conversations that will help our audience learn great things. Also, we share an interesting trivia or fun fact about the IT world towards the end of every episode. Thank you for tuning in. This is Naveen and I'm with my co-host Sudhakar. So folks, in general, we always think about conventional jobs that are focused on mainstream multinational corporations, startups or businesses. But we always overlook certain opportunities in not-for-profit organizations that are developmental in nature. So today we are going to focus on one such key area, and the topic is exploring opportunities with developmental institutions. And to talk about this niche area, we are pleased to welcome Vidyadhar to our show.
Vidyadhar Prabhudesai is the co-founder of LeeCap Ventures, which works with international governments and institutions like the United Nations, the World Bank Group, the World Economic Forum across 40 countries in Asia, Africa, and Europe. Vidyadhar is a founding curator of the Global Shapers Community, an initiative of the World Economic Forum. Vidyadhar is the recipient of the World Bank's Prize on Youth Employability for impacting more than 10 million youth till date. In addition, he is engaged with many such organizations in different capacities. Some of them are International Foundation for Sustainable Peace and Development, advisor to Harvard Business Review, economist without borders, youth consultant to Asian Development Bank, and member of a special consulting group to the Office of Principal Scientific Advisor, Government of India. Vidyadhar is also a mentor of change at Atal Innovation Mission, Niti Aayog, and has helped several startups, micro, small, and medium enterprises to scale. Vidyadhar, welcome to our show.
Hey, thank you, Sudhakar, and thank you, Naveen, for inviting me to this podcast. It's wonderful. This initiative is addressing the issues the young people are facing in terms of their careers and their choices of development as such. So I'm happy that I'm here to contribute so that the youth can get inspired and learn from what I've done.
Absolutely. Let's get started then. Vidyadhar, how do international institutions like the UN or the World Economic Forum function?
Okay, so I'll give you an insight based on my experience and my working with these international institutions for the last decade or so. There are some of the different categories of these international institutions. First, these are primarily one category is that they are governmental institutions. So, for example, United States Aid for International Development, so which is called as USAID. It's purely governmental institution run by the US government, Department of State. And all the programs, initiatives are funded through the United States government. That is one category.
Sure.
The second category is intergovernmental organization, so wherein the United Nations fall under that category, which is called intergovernmental organization, which is run with the cooperation of multiple governments. So there are member countries. So there are currently 193 countries which are members of the United Nations, and each of these bodies of the governments of these countries become members and they run the function of the United Nations. Whereas if you look at a World Economic Forum kind of institution, this is public-private think tank or public-private cooperative organization which is run with the help of private funds, it's investments from the private corporations, as well as investments with the help of government institutions. So that's where it is public-private. And there is a fourth category which is non-profit think tanks. These are again, international institutions. For example, institution like Funding for Peace or something like, Institute of Economics and Peace, which is based out of Australia. So these international think tanks, they are purely driven by donor funds, wherein a lot of international institutions, corporations, governments invest in them to measure, to contribute to the development of nations as such. So these are four broad categories of these, international institutions as such. You specified about United Nations, right? So United Nations, if you want to understand how these the government functions, you need to look at what is the history of these organizations first. So for the United Nations, as everybody knows, it is formed after the World War II, wherein there were two broad components or broad categories of the world emerged. One is the capitalist world, which was led by the US, and second is the Soviet or the socialist world, which was led by the USSR at that time. Mm-hmm. So these two worlds were separate, and they came together and formed something called as Leagues of Nations, where 50 countries, forming both these leagues, came in and formed these Leagues of Nations. The objective of that was threefold. So one is to maintain peace and harmony across the world. Then second, to develop prosperity among these member nations. Third, to contribute to the economic development, such. And lastly, as these organizations grew, some of the planetary aspects also came in picture. So if I look at the United Nations as core object and classified as a planet, which is dealing with the planetary issues or climate issues and all. Then second, which is peace, talks about maintaining peace. There should be no future wars, kind of a thing. Security of nation. Third is prosperity, when it's economic development of nations as such. People, planet, peace, and is actually about people. So which is about development of human beings that are living in these nations. So that's the core objective and the aim of the United Nations. And within the United Nations, since it is an intergovernmental organization and many governmental forces are involved in running this organization, there's a further division of it. So there are there are two main divisions. One is called as principal organizations. So these are basically 5 or 6 principal organizations that most of us are aware. So one is the UN General Assembly, where most of the debates of the nations happen. Then there is a Security Council. Then there's Trusteeship Council. Then there is ECOSOC. Then there is the International Court of Justice. So these are the principal organization. Then the second arm of the UN is the development agency. So wherein agencies like WHO is there, WTO is there, agencies like World Bank is a part of over there. So which are specialized agencies created to implement the agendas and the discussions that happen at the principal organs. So this is how these institutions kind of perform over the years.
Thank you, Vidyadhar. That actually gives us the overall perspective on the varieties of the bodies that we are talking about. I was thinking while you were elaborating, this is not a mainstream topic. Like, not many are exposed to these varieties of developmental bodies, and not many get engaged with them directly. So how have you been able to work with them? What is the logical first step to get engaged and collaborate with such prestigious organizations?
Okay, so there are numerous ways that you can be associated with these organizations. So one is definitely a direct employment, which is the route. So one of my dream when I was pursuing my commerce education, college was to work with these international institutions and get a job over there. Unfortunately, that couldn't happen. But yes, over the years, I've been able to work with them in an individual capacity and as a consultant to these international institutions. So the first step is definitely a direct employment route. And even before the direct employment route, which is there are certain areas where people can get engaged. So one is something which I pursued, basically work with these institutions as a fellow. Fellowship is typically a limited period opportunities that you get. So typically 2 to 3 years. I've been a fellow with the United Nations for several institutions. So I've been a fellow with UNESCO. I've been a fellow with UNDP, where I worked with them for a couple of years each and worked on specific assignments that were allowed to me, primarily on the Sustainable Development Goals. Since 2015 is when the SDGs were launched. So I'm currently involved with the UN on these Sustainable Development Goals as a fellow. So employment is one opportunity. Second is, as I mentioned, about fellowship. The third opportunity is organization which supports the initiative. It could be directly to providing them a grant or supporting them financially. And for that, you need to be a multi-million-dollar organizations to get into a supportive role as far as these international institutions are concerned. Also, can also get involved with them as a partner or as a vendor, where you could get a chance to implement some of their activities in your region. So for example, when World Economic Forum approached us in terms of how do we get engaged, so we became the regional partners of the World Economic Forum, where we are currently managing their lot of work as far as South Asian region is concerned, and we are their regional partners as far as most of their research and policy driven work is concerned in this region. So These are some of the ways that you can become or get engaged with these international institutions.
So employability and then fellowship, supporting them, being a vendor are some of the options that you mentioned. How does someone get employed with them? Maybe from the career and consulting standpoint.
Okay, from a career or a consulting standpoint, if you're looking to seek employment with these international institutions, so these one of the quick and the easiest way to do it is that to get an internship in these international institutions. And these internships are fairly long, so they are 2-year or 3-year kind of internships. So for example, the World Bank has something called as a young professionals program, so which engages postgraduates and the doctoral students over a couple of years term, and once they are selected through a rigorous selection process, they get deployed in one of the World Bank's institutions, depending upon where are the opportunities and the countries require the expertise of these people, and they get deployed over years and they get a wide range of activities too. It could be anything to do with implementing some of the healthcare solutions at a country level, or it could be working with some of the government agencies in a particular country in uplifting some of the issues that the country is facing. So you get opportunities to work with a lot of small countries like a Cambodia or a Mozambique or anything country like a Belarus in Europe. So those kind of opportunities you get when you become an intern or young professional fellows with these institutions. Even the UN or any of these institutions which I am working with, they have these programs which are 2-year, 3-year, and that is the best way to get into it. And that is something which I regret in my life. So I never got an opportunity to work as an intern or as a young professional fellow with these institutions. Probably that would have given me an exposure. You get to interact with presidents or the heads of the states of various countries while you are in these programs. So that's the level of interaction you're talking about. Then the second is, yes, definitely an entry level opportunities are there. So typically these international institutions look out for this certain experience level. So probably 3 to 4 years of an experience at a local level. Primarily they look at expertise and skills which are related to the development areas. So it could be social implementation of programs, working in non-profits, education, teaching. It could be any area which is a development related role, and or a social work kind of an experience is what these people look at it. And that is another way to look at getting engaged or seeking employment at an entry level with these international institutions. Yes, the selection the process step, there's a lengthy applications that you need to fill in. Then there are video interviews to be given. Then there are reference letters to be attached or submitted part of it. Then even after that, you need to go through a probation period of at least 3 to 6 months before you are completely absorbed in these international institutions. So that's a lengthy process that is involved. Yes, and they definitely look at a very quality level people joining them.
So that's insightful, Vidyadhar. While you are on this journey with these international institutions, what motivated you to start your own venture, LeadCap? And what were some of the key challenges that you faced while starting up?
The journey of LeadCap has been exciting. In fact, there is a story that why I left my high-paying corporate jobs and entered into this. I was working in a multinational in Bangalore. Roughly I spent close to about 4 to 4.5 years with this organization. One of the things that happened to me when I became into a people manager role, I was engaged in doing development work as far as the organization is concerned. There has been something called as corporate social responsibility started getting developed in the organization, and they had adopted a village for teaching and upgrading computer skills to the people who come from deprived backgrounds. So that was basically a village that was adopted in Andhra Pradesh, where I went and I started teaching specific skills on computers, Excel, PowerPoint, be explaining them how exactly computers work as such. So one of the things that I realized is that these people who are coming from very deprived background, from rural tier 3, tier 4 locations in India, they have really passion with them, just that they are not able to present themselves, or they are not able to communicate effectively as far as English is concerned, or anything which any recruiter would look at it, whether it is computer skills or soft skills as such. So these people were losing out a lot of opportunities like that. And when I was working with that organization, I realized that there is a huge gap in the market which can be be addressed. So that is the reason I left the organization and decided to start up a consulting firm. But the problem happened with me is that when I started that firm, which was helping people to find jobs through a recruitment agency, helping them to crack the interviews and drafting their resumes and helping them out, I realized that I started it on a very wrong time. The Great Recession at that time hit. This was 2008-2009 times, and I completely lost out over there. And to recover from the loss that I've incurred, I enrolled in an MBA program, finished my education, and then I joined LeadCap as an intern over there, and then further joined as a co-founder. So that's one story, and also there is an interesting story which comes from a very personal background. While I was working on a vacation at my home, I came down from Bangalore and to Thane, where I'm currently living. I have a younger brother who's now a scientist, and he was pursuing his master's program at that time. He was working on a project and doing a manual work of cutting, pasting, charts and drawing and all those things. I told him, why are you wasting your time and efforts in putting manual efforts and developing these charts, when there is an easy way out where you can go to a search on Google and to get these things ready-made easily, and you can get your project done in a faster way. So he told me one thing is that if I do the same thing as my rest of my colleagues will be doing, or my rest of my batchmates are doing, what would be the difference between them and me? So that his statement kind of stuck me for my lifetime. So I decided that with whatever I'll do from now, I'll try to create a difference or be a different person altogether. This incident actually has led me to join the corporate social responsibility initiatives of my company, which was going. So that's the story behind that. And when LeadCap got started out, the objective was very simple. The objective was to help people from the marginal background learn the skills that are required as far as the jobs are concerned. Actually, we were started running programs with partnering with a lot of institutions, colleges, universities, governments. Some of the programs were included in the budgetary allocations of the state governments also. And these kind of programs has impacted and created the impact of at least 10 million directly or indirectly kind of thing. So that's the journey of LeadCap, and that's the inspiration behind it. Apart from these, then we started venturing out based on our experience at the ground level to work with the international institutions, help them in their work as well.
That is amazing. Thank you for sharing that life journey, Vidyadhar. That definitely helps us in shaping us up, right? All our experiences. Hey, one final question for this session. What are your tips for the students and young professionals aspiring to grow big in their careers? Anything particular to this niche area or in general, so that they actually can get inspiration from your experience?
Okay, tips for young professionals. We've been partners with the World Economic Forum, and one of the things that we do is work with them on the future of jobs as such. And one of the insights that has came out from this year's version is that more than half, as in more than 50% of people or the employees that are employed today will require reskilling every 2 to 3 years as such. So whatever you are learning today will be outdated every 2 years. So that's where things are there. And if you have studied the future of jobs report in detail, the top skills which are coming out are not really the technical skills, but the top skills which are coming out are primarily the empathetical or the soft skills which are there. So for example, it could be creativity, which is coming out over as one of the top 10 skills. Commitment was something which is coming out. Critical thinking, which is also coming out. So these are things that people should focus on if they were to survive, and either in getting jobs or if they have started their careers. These are the things that they should be looking at surviving in their current career as such. So why I said that every 2-3 years you would require reskilling as such. There are two things that you can do, or what we have been through our years. So one, in terms of learning, there are two approaches which are there. So one is which is a traditional approach. Okay, so the traditional approach comes from your traditional school. So where you are put up in a school, then put up in college, university, then you pass out and then just go to job and forget for life. Okay, that's the traditional approach. But the contrasting and interesting approach comes from the sports fraternity, wherein it always says that you require a mentor and a coach for lifelong. Okay, you are never done in your life. You would see any sport for that matter, they will always carry a coach and a mentor together, and that is something which is very interesting and will definitely come in. It's actually spreading across from sports to other areas as well. So wherein you require a coach for lifetime. So you, as youth are concerned, I think they should also look at identifying mentors and coaches for themselves who can guide them throughout their lifetime. Because as I said, every 2-3 years the jobs are going to change, the skills that are required for these jobs is going to change, and only thing that you could survive is basically to have a lifelong mentor and coach with you who will guide you through all these things. So that's, I think, would help out the youth today.
Thank you. That's really helpful. Primarily focusing on 2 points: constant learning, that too on the soft skills like creativity and critical thinking. And second one, I think our guests have been consistently emphasizing on this topic of finding a coach or mentor who is there for you for long term. It has been an amazing and great learning experience conversing with you, Vidyadhar. And thanks for covering this niche topic about understanding the developmental institution sides of it. I'm sure our listeners will get immensely benefited and be inspired with this.
Thank you, Vidyadhar, for joining us and sparing your time in sharing wonderful insights.
Hey, thank you, Sudhakar. Thank you, Naveen, for inviting me on this podcast. I hope the listeners be taking out something from this.
I'm sure they will. Dear listeners, to know more about our speaker and the content, visit or follow us on social media. We are available on LinkedIn, Facebook, Insta, Twitter, Pinterest, and also on YouTube. Just search for The Guiding Voice and then follow, like, subscribe to us, and also please share within your network. In addition, please feel free to email us at The Guiding Voice for You. That is TheGuidingVoice4 as a digit, U as a letter @gmail.com, or WhatsApp us on India number 9494587187. Again, it is India number 9494587187, and we will be happy to collaborate.
Sudhakar, now let's talk about an exciting opportunity about featuring our audience in this podcast.
Sure. Of late, we have been receiving a lot of career guidance related questions from our regular listeners through YouTube and LinkedIn comments, of course, WhatsApp and email, and we are responding to them one-on-one. Now, we are pleased to open up a new mode of interacting with you all while providing a chance to broadcast yourself. If you have any questions related to education, career guidance, or a specific IT field, just send your voice message through speakpipe.com/theguidingvoice. And we will not only play your question in your voice, but also will get you the answer shared in our future episodes. Hope you will utilize this wonderful opportunity.
Alright, so it brings us to the trivia segment of today's episode. And today's trivia is about domain names. Of late, there are so many domains that are coming up, and initially, when the domain names were launched and released for public, all the combinations using various letters from A to Z, say AAA.com or BBB.com to ZZZ.com. Everything has already been registered, and probably you can give it a try by typing AAA.com to ZZZ.com. Interesting, isn't it? Alright, so thank you for listening. There is more in store, folks. Stay tuned. Have a wonderful time. Take care. Be safe. Until next time, bye-bye.